Hey guys, Josh again here with Windy City Equipment. And today we have a special episode, an interview with an industry expert. We're about to talk with Jack Mervis of FSX. FSX stands for Food Service Exchange, about building out a commercial kitchen on a budget. Obviously, this is a pretty broad topic, and we only have about 30 minutes with Jack, but he explains on a high level some of the challenges with opening a restaurant and how to overcome them. Who can you lean on? What can you do yourself? What should you hire out? And most importantly, what can Food Service Exchange do to help? FSX is the first of its kind, selling overstock, closeout, and scratch and dent food service equipment from industry-leading manufacturers. Perfect for those looking for single pieces of equipment or even multiple pieces in a new build scenario on a budget. I thought this conversation would be perfect for this channel, given that's all we talk about. So listen in and enjoy this WCE Special episode with Jack Mervis. And to contact FSX Marketplace, go to fsxmarket.com or email them at help@fsxllc.com or give them a call at 888-635-6552. That information will also be in the description below. But otherwise, enjoy the episode. Jack, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here and appreciate the invite.
Yeah, we're glad to have you. I'm super excited about our conversation today. I think my audience is going to find a ton of value in the things that we're going to talk about, primarily how to build out a kitchen on a budget. But before we actually get into the nitty-gritty and the meat of the show, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience? Let us know kind of who you are, and how you got to where you are today.
Right. So my name is Jack Mervis, and I have getting close to 40 years in the food service equipment supply industry. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is something that I always figured one way or another I would end up in business and owning a business of some type. But anyway, I attended Indiana University School of Business, graduated, and when I first got my first job was as a transportation consulting business. I did that for 7.5 years out of Cincinnati.
What is a transportation consultant?
Well, yeah. So when I was at IU, I actually worked part-time at a part-time job driving for the bus system there. And I also took a lot of classes within the school business in transportation. I always thought of logistics was something that kind of interested me. And it was very broad. It got into everything from trucking industry to mass transit to other forms of logistics. And at any rate, they recruited this company who was the largest management company for mass transit, and they managed systems and also did consulting work across the United States. So I got a job and worked for 6.5 years in Cincinnati, and then came out to Long Beach, California, to help open the first West Coast office for them. But I got the last year of working for that company, I was married to my wife, who was a native of down the road from you, Josh, to Tucson, Arizona.
Oh, okay.
And so the goal was get out west, help open this office, but we were going to look for a business to buy. Sounds kind of crazy, but that's what we did. And my father-in-law, who was a retired physician, came up with a lot of businesses that we looked at, and we ended up buying a restaurant supply business. So that's the circuitous way of how I ended up in the industry. So we bought the largest restaurant supply business in Tucson, and we did everything. We did everything from design kitchens to selling equipment and installing equipment to small wares, all aspects of what's in a restaurant except for probably the food. So I learned, I got the came to learn the business very quickly, guys by fire, I guess. And so at any rate, I hired someone who had a lot of experience in the industry from Cleveland, Ohio, and he was my mentor, basically. So we owned that business until 1996 when we sold it to a regional restaurant equipment supply business and moved to the West Coast, which was our goal at that time. I knew people from the industry through FEDA, the Food Equipment Distributor Association, as well as the two buying groups that we belonged to. So I started making calls, and I ended up going to work as the first COO for a company called Regal Incorporated. And they they strictly were involved only in the design and equipping new construction and remodel projects. So in other words, we weren't on the street selling equipment. We didn't sell anything, any small wares at all. We designed and equipped kitchens solely. The last couple of years before I came to work there, they expanded from working directly with restaurants and restaurant chains to going out and bidding on large projects, everything from hospitals to universities to prisons. There's basically no type of food service facility that Regal had not done. So that's what I did. And that was the part of the business I enjoyed the most was new construction and remodeling projects. So the design aspect of it. So I was their first COO. 2 years after that, the founder of the company sold the business to a private equity group. And from there, as I became president as the original owner retired. So I was president of Regal, which became Trimark Regal, all the way up through January of 2019 when I retired. So that's my background. It's a lot of years, but it's a great industry, and you have a lot of good friends, be it competitors or colleagues or through the buying group and so forth.
Yeah. So in other words, you have no idea what you're doing.
Yep, I didn't when I jumped in. People say it was crazy, and it probably was. It's one of those things you tell your kids don't do. But things were a lot different then, and it's been a great ride. And so after retiring, Keith Jaffe called me, who was one of the founders of FSX Food Service Exchange. Called right when I was getting retired and said, "Hey, I want you to get involved, and we're going to put some sweat equity." And that's when I said, "What are you talking about? I'm retiring in 2 weeks." He says, No, you got to do this. You have all these contacts. So of course I did it. So that's what I've been doing the last 2.5 years, is helping get FSX off the ground and mainly focusing on the contacts in the industry, be it through the dealers or manufacturers. So that's the background and how I got here where I am.
All right. Well, yeah. And, a couple of thoughts there. Number one, it's hard to keep you away from something you're passionate about, right? I mean, if you didn't have a passion for what you do, chances are you would have just kept walking, right?
Yeah.
But you didn't. And I think that speaks volumes, not only for, your regard for the industry itself, but for FSX and its capability in this specific sector, which is why you're here talking to me today. We want to give our audience a little bit of advice. Typically on this YouTube channel, we have all these how-to videos and basic repairs and maintenance and things like that, and we even go into a little bit of the soft skills, if you will, as far as how to interview for a job well if you're a technician, and how to operate a service business. But the bulk of our audience is really, that small business, that up and coming restaurant, right? That, maybe it was their longtime dream to own a restaurant, and, so now they're actually able to do it, and they're navigating the world of building it out and getting everything serviced and all that. And that's where I love to help. So, that's why I wanted to talk to you today, so on a high level, let's imagine that somebody has been working in the restaurant industry, right, for however many years. Let's say they've been working in the restaurant industry for 25 years, and that whole time they're saving and they're saving and they're saving, because their dream is to open a restaurant of their own. They finally did it, right? And they're finally able to start designing this kitchen element of their new restaurant so they can begin creating what they want to create. What advice would you have for them? Let's start with, like, I don't know, and I don't do a whole lot of kitchen build outs. You're the expert on this, but where should they start when looking at a kitchen? What should be the first thing that they look at when they say, okay, this is the space that I have. What's next?
Well, there's typically a lot that needs to go on before that, even. And let's just to point out, I have not been a restaurateur, but it's been interesting, and you see it in a little different way, but similar, that we see it coming through being, on our end of the industry. And that is, you're very much a part of them, and well, it's all about making them helping to make them successful. You do it, in the service side, but to answer that, a lot depends on, who you're talking to. If it's someone like you said, that's the most difficult. You got people who've never been in the industry. They always want to think they own their own restaurant. Don't really have an idea how difficult it is, all that's involved, but also from an operations standpoint, how difficult it is. But so if you're talking about, someone who's never owned a restaurant, it really needs to start so that they can have an accurate budget of making sure that the location that they're looking at, not so much from the demographics, obviously that's not what we do, but when they say, this is where I want to be in this area of town, here's why. And we say, okay, we're looking at this building, and, are you going to have a drive-through? Are you not going to have a drive-through? How, the space you're looking at, is it realistic or is it not realistic? Then we look at the space in terms of design, which leads more to your question. The rule of thumb used to be, things have changed now. Real estate costs have changed. Of course, now with COVID more than ever, there's more takeout and delivery than there ever was. So things change. But in the past, it was always 1/3 kitchen, 2/3 seating. It's just one of those things. It may not apply again today as much as it used to. But we'd look at that, and if you look at that and you say, wow, you're not 1/3 kitchen, you're not going to be able to make all the product that you think you're going to make, or you're not going to have enough seating, which is more important because that's where the revenue is. You're not going to have enough seating. And that kind of starts the design thing. Just a side note, out here where we are in California, there are a lot of different things, from earthquake standards, which a typical restaurant you don't get involved with. That gets more into larger projects. Actually, it's not always that way. In other words, if a senior center or a nursing home, let's say, that's a chain, and they have codes that they have to meet because of seismic, which is earthquake standards. It's more than just earthquake standards from a seismic standpoint. They have to have certain requirements for what's OSHPD. It's a state agency that rules over anything to do with healthcare. And OSHPD standards are much more strenuous than typical building standards. So these are things that we have to know about. Or over the weekend, I had a friend and former customer call and said, hey, I'm working with these guys, and they're going to put a restaurant out on the pier in Huntington Beach, and they need some help getting through the health department. Well, out there, you have the Coastal Commission you have to work with, you have the building departments, you have the health department, and all the rest. And there's certain standards because you're building it out on the pier. And they need to be working with someone who has the local knowledge of all these agencies, because if they don't do it, take this into consideration up front, they're going to run into costs. They're going to open that they didn't expect. They're going to open late. And when getting into the cost thing, that's huge. They could leave out one thing that could end up costing them, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. They're just trying to get a restaurant open.
Well, and that's
So
the biggest thing that I'm taking away here is that there's an astronomical amount of information that somebody has to have in order to open, any type of establishment like this, that serves food. And it seems like more information than one person can possibly have in their head. So they need to,
right.
implore the help of other people to guide them through this process, because at the end of the day, that is one of the things that's going to keep them within budget. Essentially, in a nutshell, that's what you're saying.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And sometimes when if they give us some budget up front before we do any of this, and you're just thinking, shaking your head, because these people. And I always remember the one time in Arizona when a couple came in, nicest people, but they came in and they wanted to open a sandwich shop, and they were going to put everything they had, which wasn't a whole lot, into it. And I almost, in a roundabout way, tried to talk about it. It was just unbelievable. People would just say, I always wanted to own a restaurant. And it's just, so there's different. So again, depending on whether you're people who maybe they got one restaurant and they're going to try to open another one and expand, or whether is it someone who is a chef, who's worked in a restaurant and he's going to open his restaurant, or anyone that's been in operations decide they want to open their, where they're coming from, where their background is, makes a big difference. So, they, as you and I both know, they need to look at where are those areas where they're weakest and where are they the strongest. In other words, do they have a business background or not? I know the podcast I watched, you touched on that. Do they have the business background, or maybe they have a good, decent business background. They're numbers people kind of, but they don't have the first thing, know the first thing about operations, and they don't know about all these other things that are required to be successful. And let's face it, we all know it's one of the toughest businesses out there. It has a huge high failure rate.
Yeah.
So a lot of it starts where I was just discussing. It all starts with the very, leasing a space and design and all those things.
Yeah, no, and it sounds a heck of a lot more complicated than I think most people think that it is. Which kind of leads into my next question, right? Is where do people go for help? You had mentioned FSX and what FSX does to help people. So let's start there. In
Sure.
what ways can FSX help somebody, build out these kitchens on a budget, whether it be a person new to the industry, or as you gave the example of somebody, a chef that's been cooking
Right.
in these kitchens forever. But what can FSX do to help?
Well, the most logical thing, of course, is price. We set this up to provide a marketplace for equipment and smallwares that both manufacturers have, manufacturers and dealers have, that are priced extremely competitive. It was initially only inventory that was either overstock, last year's model, discontinued models, scratch and dent, or in dealers' cases, there's any number of reasons why a piece of equipment is sitting in their warehouse for 3 years and it's going to sit there for who knows how long because it was either returned or, again, it has a scratch and dent, whatever. And it doesn't get the attention. Their daily business doesn't, and I know because I've been there. And it sits there and it's not the focus of anything except that you take inventory every year and it's still sitting there. And so we provide, and it's because someone has to put some effort into it, and they're busy, they're doing their daily business. Salespeople are on commission, they'd rather sell new stuff, and they just don't remember it's there. So we provide a marketplace. It's like, give it to us, we'll get it on the site, help you get it on the site. We'll market, we'll do the marketing, we'll handle the transaction, we'll pay the sales tax, and we'll send you money. We'll send you a check after we take our commission. So it's, to me, having been a dealer for, many 30 some odd years, I thought it was a great idea. And so did a lot of manufacturers when we went to the trade show. We're still, and we've done pretty well, but there's a lot more we can do to get their attention. And of course, other things are distractions for them, and we have to keep pushing them. Hey, we can take care of this for you. So, yeah.
So it sounds
that's
like it sounds like,
and that's directly related. Yeah, directly relates to budget.
Yeah,
nothing that more than anything is a direct, a line there.
Well, and what jumps out to me, what I was going to say is that the mark of any good business is the ability to create win-win-wins scenarios, right? Where everybody wins. And, the more I talk to you about FSX and how they can help, and, especially with regard to the end user, and people trying to build out restaurants, but you're really creating a win-win situation for the end user because of the cost savings, for the manufacturer for, being able to move this inventory, and for yourself for being able to actually run and operate a business that acts as the middleman in between, right?
You're absolutely right. And from the day one, when Keith first called me, I said, that's exactly what I said. I said, it's a win-win-win deal, because yes, they're not going to make money typically on a piece of equipment, but they're not making money having that piece of equipment sit in the warehouse either. Yeah. And it ends up going to an auction where you get practically nothing for it.
Yeah. So. Yeah, absolutely. So I think the industry, should be really excited for a company like FSX to come onto the scene, and be able to provide a service like this, because, it's not common, and to my knowledge hasn't been done in this fashion before. I could be wrong. I was wrong once, but it really is a intriguing idea. So in addition to FSX, where else can people go for help? Are you a one-stop shop, or are there still areas where you might refer somebody, to aid in the end user, kind of building out their restaurant and getting their operation up and running?
So, being an online marketplace, for the most part, I think we all would think of it, well, there's not a lot of touch with the customer and vice versa. But we actually have a great customer service team that knows behind what knowledge they've gained about our industry and lived in, and some of them have worked in just specific parts like, small wares or maybe not equipment. They have some people behind them that they can get answers to. So I get emails every week from our team and saying, hey, this customer says they're looking for this. Do you have any other ideas where we can get it or where we could refer them to? So the answer is yes, we can maybe not be as much of a resource as being a brick and mortar restaurant supply house. We can certainly be more than a typical online entity, because we have people that have background in the industry and know when something's right or wrong. And also when they ask the customers if we're looking for this piece of equipment, for instance, last week, someone was looking for a remote condenser for, I guess it was for an ice machine. When I'm not sure, but we had a condenser on our site that actually was from an ice machine manufacturer. And she said, would this be a good item for them? And it's like, well, stop right there. I mean, condensers, have to be sized just for specifically for the piece of equipment that they're whatever they're going to do with it, connect it to. The kinds of things, obviously, Josh, with, that's directly leads into your business. Mm-hmm. But, so, we don't want to make a mistake in saying, oh, we have a condenser, let's ship it out. Because that's a lose-lose-lose situation there.
Yep.
It's cost everybody money and potentially a customer and everything else. So we have people that have the knowledge that they can lean on us, this customer service. If they know they don't have the right answer, they have us to lean on. And that's a big thing. As far as referring, but that plays also, for instance, especially me being from the dealer side, we worked all over the country. We built restaurant chains. We had a lot of restaurant chains with Trimark and Regal. And so we did installations all over the country. And like you, Josh, you would know people too from Sofesa and, the service industry. We can give them, say, you should contact so-and-so, or I'll give someone a call for them and have them call them. And I think they can help them out. Doesn't make a sale, but it could make a customer, a client.
Yeah. And that's very well said. That's very, very well said, because that's so important, especially with an online retailer, because
Right.
often you don't find that support. And if you do find that support, their knowledge doesn't really extend, beyond just how to actually perform a task on the website, so the fact that your staff and your customer service staff has this background knowledge and can provide information is already a leg up on everybody else. And I think that's incredibly important. So
it is.
So one more topic here before we wrap this up. You through your travels and your career, and now with FSX, you've seen, I'm sure, you've seen businesses succeed. You've seen businesses fail. You've seen everything in between. So if you could offer some advice to people out there, they're in this process, right, and that are building out these kitchens after they get everything set and they're ready to unlock that front door. Do you have any advice for them to ensure their success or just help them in something they may not have the foresight on?
Do a lot of research, and research meaning, depending on, again, what little or no background they may have, talk to people that have done it. A lot of times restaurant owners, you think, well, they're all competitors. Not really. There's a lot of restaurateurs that, they help each other out. They share a lot of knowledge, surprisingly. There's, of course, the local chapter of the Restaurant Association, which is a good thing to do. That's one thing I would suggest. And they'll give them some advice as well. The local chapter administration. But I think it's talk to other restaurateurs, but do your research. And it may also means talking to general contractors, for instance, because a lot of that, the big dollar busts in their budget are things that come up along the way that they didn't have programmed in. And the architect ends up telling them after the fact, oh, you got to do this, you got to do that. Or the food service consultant, if they didn't get involved, early on. So I don't really don't know what else to say other than just realize that there's a lot you probably don't know from one aspect or another. And there's one thing else I want to mention that that FSX is doing too right now. We are just in the process of putting some recondition equipment onto our site, and that relates obviously to, it creates another very cost-conscious way to deal with the budget. And we are currently, and we're going to continue if we continue this road, which we think we will, we're moving towards, only working with people that really have a significant, a large enough and a quality enough reconditioning work. In other words, the equipment that we're putting onto our site, it's not new, it's reconditioned, but it is tested. It's what we have a checklist that is our certification. And so they have to meet all these standards because, again, we want to do the customer right. We want to develop a customer relationship, not just make a sale.
Yeah.
So the equipment that we're putting on now, some of it you literally can't tell the difference between a new piece and an old piece unless you knew that maybe it's a model that's been discontinued or something. But it looks literally brand new, and they warranty it. And we they together warranty it. So that's something else that is really important. If we don't have a scratch and dent model that's actually a new piece of equipment, we can see if they're interested in reconditioned equipment.
That's great. And there's a lot of value in that. Believe me, I've seen it in my travels too, out in the street. And, there is a lot of value in that, especially if you're just getting started. And I would imagine too that, if anybody has any questions on what they can do, I mean, even, above and beyond the equipment aspect of things, but especially on the equipment aspect of things, they can always reach out to FSX and your customer service team over there or yourself.
Yes. Absolutely.
Okay, great. So if they wanted to reach out, how would they reach FSX? You guys have a website, I imagine.
We do. We have a chat set up that they can use. They have an email, and just to make a contact, that's all we need is their contact information so that we can get back to them. And again, it'll either go to it'll usually go directly to customer service, and then we'll figure out who's the right person depending on what it is they're looking for. But the chat is used every day. I mean, our manager of that, Tony, she's got chats going in and out every day, and she'll call me and say, I want to make sure this is right, or she'll say, they're looking for this, can you help? And again, I reach out to people I know and try to find, if we don't have the piece of equipment, we'll either go to one of our manufacturers and see what they have that maybe isn't on the site yet, but they might have something. And I have some other connections, and I say, oh, maybe I know. Let me see what I can do.
Great. And I was just informed that email address, if anybody needs help with that, is help at.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. It's help at fsxllc.com. And their toll-free number here is 888-635-6552. And they would be...
And the website, of course, is fsxmarket.com.
fsxmarket.com. And all this information will be, in the description below. So I'll make sure that everybody can know if they need any assistance, how they can reach out to FSX and implore them to help. So, Jack, that's all the time we have for today.
Okay.
I really, really appreciate you coming on and talking to me and my audience a little bit about your expertise and FSX. And hopefully we'll chat again soon, all right?
Great. Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.